list. So, okay. Ms. Gonzalez, Ms. Burke, Ms. Nazarian. Then we're going to close that up, and we're going to go to public comment. Dr. Wood.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this first question is, first of all, I'm going to preface this by saying I don't expect you to have an answer, but I'm kind of looking for something to give us an idea of scope. And that is, I guess it wouldn't be an exaggeration to characterize the number of vaccinations that are administered in a year in California alone are millions. Would that be a fair characterization?
Yes.
And I've seen different numbers on this. How many actual adverse reactions are there really? And once again, I'm asking you a question, and in fairness, I probably should have asked you this in advance so that you knew this where I might go. But frankly, I didn't know I was going there. So I'm just trying to get a scope of versus the number of vaccinations, what the percentage of adverse reactions are, and if you have any sort of a handle on that.
I would point out that studies looking at significant adverse reactions, so obviously ones that are more minor, pain, swelling at the injection site, of course, are fairly common. There are other more significant ones, particularly the most common would be actually allergic reaction to a vaccine. Those are approximately 1 in a million, less than the risk of being struck by lightning. It was noted in the opposition's testimony. They made a statement about the National Vaccine Compensation Fund. They referenced that there was $3 billion. That was 4,000 cases since the founding of the fund. So we're talking not just millions, but hundreds of millions of doses of vaccination and only 4,000 cases. So studies have looked at, the Institute of Medicine has done reports reviewing immunizations and adverse reactions. I think, as they said, that nothing is 100% safe. We have even water, which is a component of vaccines, has been known to people, if you take high doses, it's not safe for you. I think that we need to acknowledge that vaccines are at least 1,000 times safer than the diseases they prevent. That's the alternative. All right, we are living in a world where people have been vaccinated before at higher rates that prevented the disease. And it is correct that one of the reasons that we only had 130-some cases of measles, which is still a lot more than we've had in the past, is because still we have a good number of people who are vaccinated, not quite enough to contain the outbreak. And so the risk from the vaccination is very small compared to the benefit of the vaccines. And this is something that's agreed upon by scientists, physicians, public health authorities from around the globe. The vast majority, not just a small majority, the vast majority of scientists, physicians, and public health authorities agree that vaccinations are safe, they work, and they're an effective strategy to reduce and even eliminate the spread of diseases like measles, polio, whooping cough. We've banned rubella from our continent, but some of these diseases are still around. We actually eliminated smallpox. We no longer have to vaccinate against smallpox. If we really wanted to stop the vaccination, let's get everyone vaccinated, make the disease go away, and then we can stop vaccinating for it. But while those diseases are still around, we need to keep people vaccinated, and we work very hard to keep the vaccines as safe as possible.
Well, thank you for the answer. I guess my concern is just in general about the entire conversation is that I believe that the role of vaccinations is extremely positive in public health, and I think I tend to look at these issues. I tend to spend a lot of time thinking about things. Just ask my wife. Quite frankly, what I did this weekend, which was a lot of reading, a lot of reflecting, looking at a lot of information, pro and con, and that's the way I do things. I guess at the end of the day, when it comes down to, I think some of us just have fundamental distrust for science, sometimes distrust for government, and unfortunately, it carries over to risks for other people. Sometimes decisions people make put other people at risk. And I went on the WHO, World Health Organization website, got it right here in front of me on Sunday, looking at measles, just measles. We're talked a lot about measles here because of the measles outbreak. It said that accelerated immunization rates are happening throughout the world in undeveloped countries. And between 2000 and 2013, because of these accelerated rates, they estimate that we have saved an estimated 15.6 million lives, prevented 15.6 million deaths. Pretty amazing stuff for the roles of vaccines. And you think I hear about, and I'm just puzzled. I'm a medical provider. I'm a dentist. Okay, I'm not Dr. Pan. I'm not going to pretend I'm Dr. Pan, but I have a background that grounds me in science through an undergraduate degree, a graduate degree, and almost 30 years of experience in the medical field. And we see in classrooms, my son was a young child at one point, we see in classrooms how easy it is for the cold to spread. Mm-hmm. And there is no vaccine against a cold. Right. And the size of the herd is important. One kid infects an entire classroom very, very easily. You talked about classroom size and herd immunity, and one kid in a class of 100 is 1%. But one kid in a class of 10 is significant. And potentially moving that herd around. I guess these are more. I guess these are not becoming questions; they're becoming more commentary, and I apologize for that. My question for the opposition, and I have two questions, and I'll try to be brief, is there will be another outbreak. I believe we did an incredible job from a public health community around the measles outbreak. It was a public health effort that helped to stem the spread of measles. It was diligence in a lot of communities. And when you look at where this disease started and where it spread to, it's pretty amazing how quickly it got to lots of different places. So my question is, at what point, how many outbreaks, do we need to realize that this reduction in vaccination rates and herd immunity is a valid discussion? Because, and I will preface this, these things do not spread in a linear fashion. It's not, they spread, one person contacts one who contacts five, and so on. So it's not these are not linear spreads. So how many outbreaks do you need to feel that we have an issue here? Because quite frankly, one was enough for me.
We have a product, vaccines, which are deemed very safe by everybody sitting here. Not 100% safe, very effective, not 100% effective. It's an excellent product. We should give people as much information as they want, and then let the parents participate in this discussion. We should not force nor coerce them. I don't want any more outbreaks. I realize that was probably at least a rhetorical question. 6 more outbreaks? No. I know that there should be no more outbreaks. We should maintain a high vaccination rate. We should develop better vaccines against influenza, against pertussis. But if the product is good enough, we must let parents participate in decisions about their children's health care. I don't think anybody wants any more outbreaks.
Assemblymember, would I share your concerns about not wanting outbreaks, especially as the father of a 9-year-old girl who hasn't received vaccines and who is susceptible? I think though that's off the topic of supporting this bill. I think when you think about this bill and you think about the cost in terms of denying certain vulnerable populations of students the right to get an education, and you take a step back and say, was that worth it? Did we improve student health? And then you look at who are all the other kids who are all the other people that come in the school and can be that one. We've got conditional entrance. You've got people who have medical exemptions who are at the school. You've got all the teachers and all the staff. You've got people that the kids come. So the question you're asking is, wouldn't it be a good idea if we had a bill that just mandated vaccines across all of our society? That's in order to reduce outbreaks. But this bill is not going to have a tremendous impact in terms of increasing student safety because it's narrow and just focused on entrance to school in K and 7th grade. And there's so many other ways that aren't addressed by this bill, like Disneyland, where kids can still be exposed. And so the question is this bill, the little that you get, is it worth the tremendous cost to these students who you're denying education to?
One of my fears, I do a lot of things during my checkups. I talk about nutrition, household safety, car seats, helmets. I talk about a lot. And I'm afraid that if parents feel coerced when they come into my office, if they feel judged because they have chosen alternative vaccine schedules, as some of you in the room have chosen, I'm afraid they're going to leave. They're not going to come back. They're going to say, we're going to homeschool, and I'm going to lose the opportunity to talk about vital, really crucial health care issues about their children. Vaccines are safe enough, vaccines are effective enough, so that parents should participate in this choice.
I go back to my question, which was never answered. How many outbreaks do we need for this to be considered?
I assume that was a rhetorical question.
It was not a rhetorical question. It was a
direct
question.
I would say we want no more outbreaks, and we really, again, 130 cases amongst 39 million people, and it stopped because of our high vaccination rate, and we have a high vaccination rate because we've informed parents, and we have a higher vaccination rate because of 2109, which, no, I did not support initially, but the impact was at least partially positive, and it's working. By the way, it's been around for a few months, and I am on the front lines. I'm in my office 5, 6, or 7 days a week giving vaccines and discussing vaccines. That bill worked. Giving it a chance to work is a great idea, and I think that bill will eliminate any more outbreaks of diseases against which we can vaccinate and for which we have a good enough vaccine. It will not eliminate outbreaks of influenza.
All right, let me just jump in here. We talked about narrow tailoring earlier, and I want to ask you to narrowly tailor your responses to the questions of the members. Answer their question, and then stop and see if they have another question, and we'll move through the member questions and get on to public comment. Dr. Wood, do you have any more questions?
Just one last question, and this is to the opposition. How do you answer the question for the parent who has a child that cannot be immunized, that is now potentially at risk from parents who have unvaccinated children who may bring those to school? You potentially by not having vaccinations might be creating a situation where that deprives that child of their education. So what is your there is a disconnect here, because I don't see a lot, I don't sense, I don't hear a lot of compassion for the kids who cannot receive immunizations because of an existing medical condition.
The Institute of Medicine is extremely clear. There are huge gaps in vaccine safety science. Not only do they not know how to identify who's at risk for vaccination, harm from vaccination, they do not know how to identify those for whom the vaccine will fail. There are a lot of cases of disease in this country in fully vaccinated people that are never diagnosed or reported. It is an illusion that the children who are severely immune compromised who attend school are going to be protected if everyone is vaccinated. It simply is not true.
To answer your question directly, excuse me for a second,
I guess
child on chemotherapy with low white counts, a child who's immunocompromised, is threatened, as I tell parents, that child is threatened by boogers, okay? That child is not necessarily threatened by diphtheria or whooping cough or polio. That child is threatened by viral illness, and the oncologist in charge of that child will tell the parents when that child can go to school and when that child cannot go to school. And the illnesses against which we can vaccinate do not threaten those children. They are threatened by viral illness, as is your great-grandmother who's on chemotherapy or has heart issues and is on immunosuppressive drugs. It's not whooping cough and polio. It's routine viral illness, and we can't do much about that.
So wait a second. Wait a second. Let's jump in. Let me jump in here.
I appreciate the answer, but I'd like Dr. Pan to give feedback on that.
Okay.
I have the right. Hey,
Okay, we're going to go to Dr. Pan, but I want to say this. You have a team of witnesses who are here, expert in different areas. I want to ask you to please consult with each other and determine which person is best suited to answer the question that's being asked. Choose that person, have one answer. We're not going to jump in and have a free-for-all, please. Okay, let's go to Dr. Pan. And Dr. Wood, is this your last question?
That's it. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
I think that your question strikes to the heart of the issue because in fact, I have right next to me expert in infectious disease, as well as pediatric infectious disease, as well as my own expertise as a pediatrician with a background in public health. Diseases like chickenpox, and I relayed the story of the child who had the heart transplant. They are deadly to children who are immunosuppressed. They're not worried about catching the cold, right? There are children who they're in hospitals, but there are children who are in communities who are immunosuppressed, who have transplants, who may be finishing their chemotherapy, who are at risk from diseases like chickenpox, measles, so forth. And how we keep these diseases at bay is because we have vaccinations. And when an unvaccinated child is exposed to one of those diseases, the children who are immunocompromised are the ones who often get sent home. And they're losing their opportunity for an education. And so their rights need to be upheld as well.
Let's go to Assemblymember Gonzalez.
All right, I have a few questions, and I just appreciate a one-word response. So for the opposition, and I heard it stated by Dr. Pan, but I just want to make sure, has there been any physician in California disciplined or even investigated by the medical board for providing a medical exemption or even relaxing a vaccination schedule?
To the best of my knowledge, no, not yet.
No. Is that the answer?
No, the answer is no.
Thank you. Is there somebody from the medical board here? Can I ask you the same question?
Please come forward. If we can make space at a microphone, please.
Just yes or no that you're aware of.
To my knowledge, no, but for historic information, I would have to do a search of our database. But to my knowledge, since I've been here, no, for the last 5 years.
Thank you. I just, again, because this is like bad information that is coming out and directed to me by my constituents, and I just want a yes or no. Is there an exemption anywhere in this bill or any other bill for undocumented immigrants to not have to have vaccines to enter school? Does anyone know of this, Dr. Pan? Are you aware of such exemption in your bill?
There's no exemption. There's no reference made to undocumented.
Do the opponents know of such exemption?
No.
Okay. I want to be clear for those watching at home. There is no exemption for immigrants who come to this country, by the way, who are vaccinated in their own country because they see the devastating effects of these diseases, to enter our schools without vaccinations. No, I'm sorry, but there is a bunch of misinformation out there, and it is irritating and beyond belief to me that we're going to have this hearing and not address the very specific issues that are floating around on Twitter and in the media and in phone calls that make no sense whatsoever. We can debate this bill, but I want to make sure we're debating this bill. You'll get that. They need to be quiet.
Wait, the sergeants will remove this member of the public. Sergeants, please. Assemblymember Gonzalez, you're doing a great job moving through your questions. Sure. Let's go to the next one, please.
I'd like to know, because I heard something about parents being thrown in jail. Is there anything in this bill that would suggest a parent would be thrown in jail because they did not vaccinate their children? Dr. Pan?
No.
Is there anything, I'd ask the opposition, is there anything in this bill that suggests that a parent would be thrown in jail for not vaccinating their child?
Well, it's illegal to have a truant child, and it'll be illegal to try to send your child to school without vaccines. And I'm not quite sure how an undocumented alien documents vaccinations from the country from which they came. I'm very serious.
I'm sorry, but last I checked, when they enter school, they also have to show their immunization records. I don't know if you don't take care of those kids, but they're actually kids in my district. So I just want to be very clear that they have to still show an immunization record to enter our schools.
Well, of course they do. But what I was asking, I don't mean to be argumentative, but how do they document that they received vaccines before they came here?
Other countries also document vaccines. I know it's incredible, but Mexico actually requires it for school as well. Okay. And quite frankly, so I just want to be clear, though, they have to show the school something prior to entering the school.
All right.
That was my question.
Assemblymember Gonzalez, if you could just ask your questions, and if someone has an answer, do their best to answer it, and let's go to the next question.
I heard something about MALDEF and the NAACP. I just was wondering if anyone had the actual percentage of Latinos and African Americans who are exercising a personal belief exemption in relation to the general population. Okay, so nobody has that answer? All right. I'm just curious because, we're hearing a lot of things today and previously. I would ask, and I'm sorry, I was called to another committee hearing and I didn't get to hear the attorney's qualifications or where you're from, and I trust, you've stated law correctly from my understanding of law as well, but what were they?
Asking specifically about my credentials?
Yeah, just because I didn't hear them.
Yeah.
I'm not in any way being accusatory. Obviously, I heard the
of
doctors.
course. I'm a very proud product of K-12 public education in the state of California. I graduated with honors from Harvard University, and I graduated at the top of my class at Loyola Law School.
Great.
I clerked for the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in Pasadena, and I've been a practicing attorney who teaches education law.
Okay. And so are you aware of Erwin Chemerinsky? I'm just curious. And would you suggest that he is also a legal scholar and has substantial credentials, including arguing in front of the Supreme Court?
I believe Professor Chemerinsky has argued in front of the Supreme Court, but I'm not I can't speak to his other credentials.
I just want to be clear, because I think he is the dean of the Irvine Law School, and I think that he has written both in a way that we can all read, but also extensively on why he feels this, in fact, is constitutional under the California Constitution. And I just note that because sometimes I think, and I value that, in law we can always find two people with very high credentials, and not to suggest that Senator Allen isn't on par with you or myself aren't on par with your legal credentials, but I just do want to point out that somebody who many of us would consider one of the foremost constitutional scholars in the state has actually suggested that this absolutely would be constitutional. Are you aware of that?
I'm not.
Okay, I'd be happy to pass on some of that work to you. I was just curious about those aspects. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Assemblymember Gonzalez. Next we have Assemblymember Burke.
I'm not as exuberant as Assemblymember Gonzalez, but I will do my best to express myself clearly. I just want to express to you, first of all, what's happened to you is literally, as a mother, my worst nightmare. But that being said, not unlike Assemblywoman Gonzalez, I am very frustrated with the opposition using scare tactics and misinformation. For example, your comment about that I would find challenge in getting a conditional exemption, and so I contacted my doctor while I was here, and he said he would absolutely provide me with a conditional exemption. I'm not saying that does not mean that your doctor didn't, and I would never say that. I just want to make sure that I'm clear that my doctor actually was willing to provide it, and I would imagine that if my doctor was, that there are other doctors that would too. Not to say that your doctor would not give your child an exemption. I would, I don't want to.
Just in case my testimony was misunderstood,
Yeah.
what I said is that my daughter would not qualify for a medical exemption because she's perfectly healthy. I didn't make any comments about conditional
Not you,
exemption.
no, the doctor here did. And so I just wanted to make sure I cleared that up, that in fact I could get it a conditional exemption.
Pardon me if I wasn't clear, but you're an assemblywoman in the state of California. You can get a medical exemption. There are going to be a lot of families that cannot get medical
Okay,
exemptions.
so let's address that, because actually I have that too. He addressed that as well, and he said, no, let's be clear. If we're going to talk about it, let's talk about it. I don't mind. So I actually asked the doctor how often they do it, and they said on a regular basis they provide people. Well, let me read it, actually. Let's be clear. That, in fact, he said that they get the question a lot, and that they have no problem giving an exemption because they vaccinate at a slower pace.
Because they do, I'm sorry.
Because they are open to vaccinating at a slower pace, they do get the request on a regular basis for a conditional exemption, and that they provide it.
But I don't think that this bill allows for that. I don't think the bill allows for
We just had, wait a minute, and this is exactly what I'm trying to kind of avoid, is that I asked the question earlier, Dr. Pan, and please answer the question again.
Yes.
If I get a conditional exemption for child care or for school, K through 12, is my daughter, according to this legislation, allowed to go to school?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember Burke. Assemblymember Nazarian.
First and foremost, thank you, Senators Penn and Allen, for bringing this important measure. Obviously, it stirred up a lot of emotion and interest. I just want to be clear about the medical exemption. Mm-hmm. This is something that I've discussed the matter with you previously, and I'm happy to be a co-author. Yet, this area concerns me somewhat, only because I want to know, given if we lose the opportunity to have personal beliefs not available. In the case of the gentleman who was talking about his daughter who's perfectly healthy, if the first child has a reaction. Would there be a medical exemption for the second child?
So the medical exemption...
Does it clearly
let me
allow
just
that?
So what the law, the bill and the law clearly states is that the medical exemption is at the professional judgment of the physician. We took an amendment to absolutely clarify that point. And so what that means is that if the physician feels that a sibling of a child, because the condition may be genetic, it may be family related, that therefore that child is also at increased risk, even though that child has not yet suffered harm, then they can exercise their professional judgment to provide an exemption. That is, it's the professional judgment of the physician in terms of what they believe that if the risk of the immunization is going to be such that it's going to put that child at certain or near, basically at increased harm, then they can provide that exemption. And so that's to the judgment of of actually any licensed physician in the state of California. There's no requirement that you even have to go to a physician that you've seen multiple times in the past. The law clearly states that any licensed physician in the state of California can provide a medical exemption. Mainly, what they have to do is document the reason. They document the duration, and there's no limitation. That could be indefinite. And they have to sign it, of course, saying that they're as a licensed physician. Then you get a medical exemption.
Okay, so, Mr. Chair, if you allow me to just follow up on a couple
Please do, Assemblymember Nazarian.
So, okay. So then, if the parent, let's say the decision of the physician is to not allow, then the parent is left with the choice of going to either another doctor, or if maybe that is not available given regional constraints or various other issues, they will need to oblige. What if the second child also has an adverse reaction? What happens at that time?
So, I think one of the things we have to be clear about is that the physician exercises professional judgment whether to grant a medical exemption based on assessment of risk to a particular child. And again, we take into account family history, other circumstances that are related to that particular child. All right. And of course, and as we discussed earlier, and we won't go through because of brevity of time, I think I've shared with you numerous studies, whether it's related to vaccination or other things, where physicians tend to bend rules toward and the benefit of a patient, even though we do also have to be cognizant of the larger public health issues as well. And that we also have to recognize is that as the physician is talking to the parent, right, they have to weigh, they're weighing the risk of the vaccination against the possibility of that child actually catching that disease. And of course, even if herd immunity, and with herd immunity decreasing, that probability is actually going up, right? So 20 years ago, measles, measles actually, we didn't even have 100 cases in the whole country. We had 40, 80 cases. Now, we had 600 in the whole country last year. So as physicians are working with the parents trying to assess risk, they have to think about there's the vaccine, right, and what the rationale is, right? Clearly, if they have an immune compromise, et cetera, there may be some more areas that are gray areas, and that's a judgment call. And then they have to weigh that against the probability of that child actually catching the disease and catching it from someone else, right? And saying that how that balances out. And so, again, physicians work with their parents. In fact, let's go back to AB 2109. My dear opponents here who are now supporting the bill were right here testifying, saying that doctors were going to force people to get vaccinated by refusing to sign the form saying that they consulted. And we had a whole line of doctors here saying, no, I would sign the form. Even I may disagree, but I'm going to sign the form. And once we implemented the bill, this first year of implementation, we have not had a situation where we had large groups of parents going around saying that they couldn't get someone to sign the form because doctors were refusing because they wanted to force people to get vaccinated. That didn't happen. In fact, I'm now hearing the opponents declaring a total success. And that's great. It's actually, things are better than they thought. So I think that's also testimony that doctors actually want to work with their patients. Just like, that's what's going to happen.